Welcome to the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. And on tonight's show, we got a lot of NFL discussion, a lot of hot takes, a lot of great debate topics that we're going to be doing on tonight's show. Episode number 2 here on PR Connections Radio, here on Sports Angle with your host, Ian Kelly. And, of course, I have to bring on very knowledgeable guests, people who know what they're doing. So, of course, I bring in my friends. I bring in my family. So I'm going to have him introduce himself and tell you where he can find himself as well. But tell everybody who you are.
All right, man. I'm just a vessel, man. I'm just a vessel. I'm just a guy. I'm just a jag, okay? Just a jag. I'm just here, so I don't get fined. Or, so, I can make a PR connection or two. Nah, I'm just messing. I'm Andre the Torch Robinson, man. Challenger Community News, sports writer, sports reporter, Power 96.5, FM radio host with my guy Mookie Hoggins. You know what we do. And, of course, I have to represent the one and only Rise Up family, of course. I'm that guy, the guy that, talk sports. That's what I do. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I want to thank Rocco Rakelli, guy that I've known for so long, doing so many shows with on PR Connections. Thank you, prconnectionsradio.com, for having me, the voice of new media. Appreciate you, man.
Absolutely. And, the NFL has been a very big roller coaster the last 48 hours. There's been trades. There's been releases. Heck, there has even been one huge topic that came out of Houston, Texas, that we'll talk about later in the show. But for right now, I want to focus on the scouting combine, because the scouting combine was a big deal. I mean, you had the 40 time and the fact that you had some guys who were 4.28, but then the NFL didn't allow it. So instead, those ones were only 4.40. or 4.38. So before we get into the big trades, before we get into the big releases, Andre, I want to focus on the scouting combine because that was a huge deal at the beginning of the week. And I want to know, how big of a deal do you think it was to see these players have their draft stocks go up, their draft stocks go down? How valuable is it for the scouting combine as a prospect and as someone who's trying to enter the NFL?
Well, first and foremost, I think it's super important for teams that are looking for opportunities to fill holes in their, organizations, looking to build on their organizations, looking to, solidify their organizations. The NFL Combine is a tool to do so, in which, the best talent from all over the nation come and show their talent, whether it's running the 40 or whether it's the best the bench press. Sorry about that. Whether it's the bench press or whether it's, how high can you jump? All that is super important because as we know, sometimes those picks can make you or break you. Those first round picks can make you or break you. Those second round picks can make you or break you. And then there's some picks that come in 4th, 5th round that actually help an organization even more. We've seen that so many times. So it is super important when an organization goes out here, and this one was in Indianapolis, by the way, that they make sure that they get the best, suitable fit for their organizations. Not just the flashy guys, not just the, the top 15 guys who, make the combine and everybody talks about on, certain media shows, but making sure that you find fits for your organization. Okay, so it's super important, very important. It is a joy, though, to watch these guys excel. Okay, it's a joy to watch them excel. It's a joy that all that time that you spent the road you spent from being a little kid, I'm sure, wanting to play football, to playing junior high school football, to playing high school football, to going to, the college that you wanted to go to put in work, to show the world who you are, and then to get into the NFL combine, and then, take that motivation and be able to, embrace that and then show off a gift. It's super important, and I think all of these guys, whether their stock went up or down, deserve kudos.
So as we were talking about the scouting combine here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, I'm your host, Ian Rikelli. We're here with Andre Robinson, the fire starter out there, Power 96.5 out there in Buffalo, New York. And
Sure.
Before we get into the first big headline that came from the last 48 hours, if you look at NFL mock drafts, which I rarely do because a lot of them are just smoke and mirrors, but most NFL mock drafts have Aiden Hutchinson or they have offensive tackle Evan Neal from Alabama being the first overall pick. This will be the first time in about 5 years that we have had a quarterback not be the number one overall pick. So, do you think that really showcases how valuable the offensive line and how valuable the defensive line is? Or does it showcase how a lack of a quarterback class this year is? Like, which one do you think is really showcasing the most? The more valuable part of an offensive line or the lack of a star-studded quarterback class in 2022?
To be very honest with you, I think it's a mixture of both. If you ask me, I think we already got the notion that the offensive line is super important. Probably 20, 30 umpteen years ago, when a guy named Lawrence Taylor tore up the league and made the offensive line position super important. The reason why you got Michael Orr movies, that you got The Blind Side, super important. Offensive line, definitely important when it comes to protecting your quarterback's backside. We've seen this more and more as time has progressed. That is just super important to protect your team's backside, as the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. They know all about that, especially playing in the Super Bowl this year against a team who comes for your quarterback's backside. With that being said, is the reverse side of things, which is being a predator and coming for your quarterback, coming for that piece, the most important piece on a football team, that quarterback. All right, getting to him in a timely fashion, super important. So both sides are super, super important. And this year, I think that this draft class has, accentuated those positions more than the quarterback position. Because, again, who would you pick up in this year's draft that was a quarterback?
You have Desmond Ridder and you have Malik Willis. Those are the top two at the moment. You got Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral. They're a little.
Now let me ask you. So here's my question to you: which one of those were in any national championship? Was any of them even in the discussion for the run in the national championship? I think Desmond Ridder plays for
Cincinnati. He was in the Final Four,
right?
But he lost.
He was in the Final Four. That's the only one, though. The only one. Young wasn't. Young didn't. He's staying in Alabama another year. So, again, when I look at high quality, top of the class quarterbacks, you didn't have that. The year before you had Trevor Lawrence. You had Trevor Lawrence, guys like him. Zach Wilson, you had guys like him. There's a difference. There's Trey Lance, who was North Dakota State, which is the FCS team. Again, you don't have those type of talents in this class. So obviously that would accentuate the other positions, and offensive line and defensive line is booming, along with the cornerback position as well. I would be amiss not to mention the cornerback position, but go ahead.
And then I will ask one final question about the NFL draft before we move on to the trades and everything that happened. And the NFL, we always talk about mock drafts, and we always talk about, all right, is this team going to move up? Is this team going to trade up? And more importantly, every single year, there's always been that conversation, like, would you trade up for the number 1 overall pick? Would you go up and would you trade multiple first-round picks to get the number 1 overall pick? And we saw it in 2016 with the Titans and the Rams. We saw it in 2012 with the Rams and the Redskins. We even saw it a couple of years ago back in 2007, if I remember correctly. So when it comes to the NFL draft, do you think that there will be a team that will trade up to the number 1 overall pick to get the projected number 1, who is Aiden Hutchinson? Or because there is no quarterback who is going to go in the top 5 picks, according to most experts and most analysts, is they're not going to budge and they're just going to stay at their position, and they're going to try to get, if they have to get a quarterback, later in the draft?
Well, okay, so obviously, Rocco, you know this. You're the sports angle guy. So let me shoot this from a different angle. You obviously, with angles come formulas, right? You know that. So what's the formula when it comes to an organization and a team and the team's need? Obviously, one, you're looking at, do we get a veteran in the free agency market? Is that important? Or do we get a guy who could be top 5 in the class that we don't have to pay as much for? So then you take those two, you mix it together, you mix those, analytical formulas together, and then you make a hypothesis or an educated guess, because nothing is just, I just know. There's never, I just know. I'm just, some hit, some miss, right? So you do that, and then you figure, what teams really need Aiden Hutchinson badly? What teams could afford Aiden Hutchinson to use him right now? Is he the guy that's going back right now, right this minute, right this second? Those teams are the teams who may move up to get this guy. So, my question to you is, what teams do you think, think need that?
Well, I'm going to start with the teams that were the bottom 2 in the NFL in defense last year. That was the New Jersey Jets, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars. Understand that Jacksonville Jaguars, they have their face of the offense, but they really don't have a face on the defense. They traded away everybody who was part of Jacksonville 4 years ago. So if you're Jacksonville trading up, and trading, actually, no, they wouldn't be trading up. They get the number 1 overall pick. Aiden Hutchinson would be the number 1 overall pick if Jacksonville decided to go that way, because they do need a face of the defense. Whereas the New York Jets, hint, New Jersey Jets, because that's always been my running joke here on the show. The New Jersey Jets, they need defense. Because understand the offense, they've been kind of building that up the last couple of drafts. But the defense, once again, was ranked dead last in the NFL. They've had multiple free agents either flunk out or essentially not be what they were supposed to be. And a lot of their draft picks have either went on to someplace else and fried or were absolute busts. So when it comes to the New York Jets, I say they could be a part of it. I say Jacksonville having the number 1 overall or the number 1 overall pick already, they would be a team that could do it. But I'm also going to put the Detroit Lions on there as well, because the Detroit Lions, Aiden Hutchinson's Michigan. All right, he is a Wolverine. And if you can get the hometown boy, you can get the guy who his dad was University of Michigan, that's just the bloodline. So I say Detroit, Jacksonville, and the Jets are 3 teams I would say could get Aiden Hutchinson. And as we have talked about the scouting combine, we talked about the NFL draft in the first segment here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. We're here with Andre Robinson from Power 96.5 out there in Buffalo, New York. Challenger Sports News, Rise Up Family, you know it. Now it's time to get into the first big trade, and really the first big announcement that broke out.
Not to interrupt you, I want to mention something, because I want people to understand this. Jacksonville is number one. So here again, we talked formula, right? About Aiden Hutchinson, right? Do the Jacksonville Jaguars want to add another piece to Josh Allen? Josh Allen, as you've seen, obviously can change a game or not. The New York Jets, you mentioned, or the New Jersey Jets or New Jersey Giants, the Giants having a new coach and a new GM could be looking to build up on what side of the football. Obviously, it would be the defensive side. Could Brian Dable and Schobel, who was from, right here in Buffalo, want to move up to get that guy right there who could be an impact player? So you have to take all those things and put it together. Now, obviously, I'm going to let you get back. That's just what I just want to make sure I put that out there real quick and put those things in perspective. But go ahead.
Of course. Man, there's a reason why I bring you on. I mean, your knowledge and everything you bring to it, that's, of course, the reason why I've considered you a good friend of mine. Now, when it comes to a big move that happened in terms of the NFL the last 48 hours, we have to talk about Carson Wentz going from the Indianapolis Colts to the Washington Commanders. I mean, understand that Carson Wentz, out of all quarterbacks, getting flipped after one season. Doesn't that kind of show you that Philadelphia made the right choice in flipping Carson Wentz when they did? Doesn't that kind of make the Colts organization look like a bunch of you-know-whats after having him for one season and then going, nah, we're going to trade you for a couple of second-round picks? Like, seriously, make it make sense. I know that's something you talk about a lot, but make it make sense. Was the Eagles correct in getting rid of Carson Wentz, moving on from him, getting onto the Jalen Hurts wagon that we all saw this past season, and trading him at the right time instead of what's happened recently with Carson Wentz? What do you think, Andre?
So I think that we all know that Philly made the right decision on getting rid of Carson Wentz and sending him abroad, right? I think we know that they made that decision, correct decision. He went to Indianapolis. They had some weapons. They had talent. And this guy couldn't make the playoffs with the number one leading rusher and Jonathan Taylor. You make me laugh in a way I don't want to laugh on radio, especially when you miss the guys who this laughter comes straight from the ribs, up the tube, out of my mouth. I'm holding it in. I'm trying to my best, but this might keep me from laughing as loud as I want to. Okay. Carson Wentz is back in the NFC East, in which now there may be some motivation for Carson Wentz to show the Eagles that you missed. You got Jalen Hurts, and I'm about to hit you where it hurts, being on the Washington Commanders. So don't leave that out now. As much as I want to laugh, I want to crack up, die laughing. I mean, LMFAO in big capital letters. That might be some motivation there for Carson Wentz and the Commanders.
It could be. We're talking about the NFL and the events that have happened in the recent 48 hours here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. And one of the other big news that did break down, and, obviously we're only going to talk about it for a few minutes and then we'll move on to the next topic. However, there was a certain workout video that came out recently about former NFL quarterback Colin Kaepernick. He was working out. He wants to make a return to the NFL. And I just want to ask you, Andre, before I give my angle on it. First off, do you think the workout video is actually accurate? There are some people who are saying that he's left-handed, so why is he throwing right-handed? There's also been some people who have said that he's not coming back, so chill with that. However, before I give my angle on it, I want your angle, Andre. When it comes to the workout video, do you think that he actually will make an NFL return? And more importantly, what kind of impact would he have if he made a return to the NFL?
So, interesting enough, I've heard reports that the Giants may be looking to make Colin Kaepernick a backup to Daniel Jones. As intriguing as that sounds, and that probably will be one of the biggest stories in the NFL. I think the door is closed on Colin Kaepernick, unfortunately. He's 34. I didn't know he aged so fast. This was a guy, the last time I remembered him playing, he was in his young 20s. I thought he was a young warhog, you know.
Yeah, it sounds about right. University of Nevada, he was already in his 20s when he was starting quarterback there.
Right, absolutely. He's 34, folks. Aging quarterback. Are you willing to make the investment for that and what comes with the investment? Do I think Colin Kaepernick deserves a chance? Sure. I mean, sure. Again, we had the conversation about how many quarterbacks is better than Colin Kaepernick. That's starting in the league. And then how many quarterbacks on the bench that's warming up the bench, pouring the Gatorade is better than Colin Kaepernick. We've had this discussion. Mitchell Trubisky last year was probably the best backup quarterback in the league. Who's going to get a hefty bag coming up for those who don't know? And I would say Colin Kaepernick, how he played when he was in the NFL with some talent, was better than Mitchell Trubisky in some way, shapes, and forms. So, I mean, look at it both ways and both sides. Take both sides of the story. And on my Libra scale, I would say the door is closed, unfortunately. But I would love to see him in an NFL uniform.
Well, it's interesting because you said the Giants, but that actually wasn't the team I was going to go towards, because I actually think the Seattle Seahawks, surprisingly, could be a team that Colin Kaepernick could go to, because understand that they really don't have a quarterback right now. I mean, Drew Lock is a average quarterback. Let's just be honest. He's an average quarterback in the NFL. You have Geno Smith, who, let's just be blunt, he was a bust in the New York Jets. You know, he was not a great quarterback at that level. And here's the reason why I'm going to say this, is because, yes, he's been out of the league for a couple of years. Yes, he is 34 years old. However, if he shows that he is willing to put in the work, you know, if he shows that he has the determination, because we all know that he had the talent in the NFL. We saw it for multiple years. He had the talent to be there. But if he has the hard work and the dedication, and he's willing to put in those hours every single day, if he's willing to go to all the practice sessions, then I say, if you're Seattle Seahawks, give him a shot. You know, sign him to a PTO, have him be part of the NFL preseason. And hey, if you know what, he can't cut it, then you know what, you release him, you move on, and then the conversation's officially over. But I've always said, Andre, and it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, as long as you have the talent, as long as you have the hard work and dedication, you should be given the chance to show that you can have a job in the NFL.
So, interesting that you mentioned Seattle, because there was an article in the Seattle Times yesterday. I don't know if you read it, but there's an article that expresses Mike Florio, the guy from Pro Football Talk, said that there's absolutely no way that Seattle signs this guy after being gone for half a decade without playing any type of football whatsoever. Mike Florio, I would be very mindful and careful of the underestimation of will, power, and determination. Again, do I think his door is closed? Most likely. But would I love to see that? Of course, I'd love to see him in a uniform. I think it's great. It would be a great time. Now is a great time for Colin Kaepernick to get back in. I think it's a phenomenal time. Will it happen? Probably not. Seattle? Probably not. They got Drew Lock, as you mentioned. Could they be looking at Marcus Mariota?
Possibly,
right? So It all depends. Again, here we go with the analytics and trying to build the formulas. Giving you a different angle, giving you the sports angle. My guy Rocco is so great at doing this guy right here. Yeah, this guy. Yeah, you got to make sure you get the right direction, because if you point that way, it looks like I'm pointing at the light. But this guy right here. Yep. You gotta take all that into consideration. I would love to see it, but to dream
Continuing the NFL conversation here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Rakelli. We are here with Andre Robinson, the fire starter from the Rise Up family and Power 96.5 FM out there in Buffalo, New York. And we're going to travel down to Houston, Texas, because what just happened recently is going to change the NFL world. What was announced earlier in the day so important to the landscape that we have to talk about it, Andre. The world has to talk about it. And hey, the chat's open, by the way. So if you want to put your angle in, you want your angle to be heard, you can definitely put it down below. So when it comes to Deshaun Watson, there is no charges filed against him. There is going to be no further charges, no further investigation when it comes to Deshaun Watson and the allegations that were put against him. So we have finally gotten the verdict, and the allegations are finally over in the past for Deshaun Watson, the star quarterback for the Houston Texans. But now the biggest question arises. The biggest question is, will the Houston Texans trade Deshaun Watson? And more importantly, I'm going to dig a little deeper. If Deshaun Watson does get traded, what team is willing to put in the time and the work to trade multiple draft picks, trade their quarterback in the deal to bring in Deshaun Watson and have them be their starting quarterback? So will he be traded from Houston is the first part of the question. And second part is, what team needs a quarterback so desperately that they're willing to trade maybe 4 draft picks and their quarterback to get Deshaun Watson onto their club?
Okay, first and foremost, great questions, but I would be wrong not to inject something into this conversation. First and foremost, this man has damn near lost 2 years of his career, NFL career. Over 22 sexual misconduct violations was filed. And the grand jury today decided and declined to indict him on none of them, which tells me exactly what we thought from the beginning, which is, Houston, we have a problem, a major problem. 1, Deshaun Watson should never play another down for that organization. 2, as despicable as it sounds, the fact that the Houston Texans would even utter to think that there's a possibility that he stays is absolutely arrogant. There's no way. Secondly, if there's anybody who is going to trade for Deshaun Watson, it better be a team who needs a quarterback right now, who has money money for Deshaun Watson. Because if I'm Deshaun Watson and I'm not agent and I'm the guy who's been blackballed, nevertheless, and I know that term it strikes nerves. I don't want to strike nobody's nerves. Shout out to PRConnectionsRadio.com. But I have to make this very clear. I'm coming for a bag, and immediately I want the bag. With having the bag comes some other ramifications and some retribution. Do I need to sue the Houston Texans first and foremost? Do I need to sue this organization? In which, if you sue an organization, well, the NFL probably isn't going to allow you to pick up on another team if you're suing, unless you're Brian Flores and you get an opportunity to be with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We've seen that. Okay. but I'm suing. Houston, we got a problem.
That was nearly 2 years of his career.
Listen, I want the bag. I want the bag. But with coming with the bag, Deshaun Watson has to be super smart from here on out. He has to rebuild his name, has to make smarter decisions and smarter choices, or all this means nothing. Because we've seen guys beat a case and then turn around and do stupid stuff right afterwards. Okay? So with that being said, again, we looking at it from a certain angle. You got to add every aspect into it and formulate a legitimate, a legitimate guess, because we don't really have all the answers. But I mean, putting it together, I would say a team that needs a quarterback immediately would probably grab a one Deshaun Watson. Would it be? It can't be Jacksonville. You invested Trevor Lawrence too much. Is it? Is it the Jets? Is it the Jets? Is it the Giants? Right, those New Jersey teams you talked about. Is it right? I mean, they need a quarterback, right? We ain't got no quarterbacks in this draft now. You just told it earlier. Desmond Ridder, really?
Malik Willis.
So Malik Willis. We dancing. Cha-cha. We cha-cha dancing here, right? We don't know, I'm not going to act like I know what team is going to get Deshaun Watson because of the moves that I've seen. I thought Green Bay might have been one of them, especially seeing that there was talks about, Rodgers going wherever he was going to go, which we know that ain't happening. Denver got Russell Wilson. We know what happened with that. The guys that have been talking about getting quarterbacks, and then the Commanders just went and got Carson Wentz. Are they wondering now? Should we have waited a little bit longer? I don't know. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm gonna say I don't know what team is gonna get Deshaun Watson.
Well, considering this is the sports angle, and considering I'm your host, Ian Rakelli, everyone knows, everyone's anticipating on what my angle is going to be, and more importantly, what team do I have Deshaun Watson going to. So let me break this down for you, Andre, and let me break this down for all the audience, all the people watching around the world here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. There is a certain team that has a boatload of first-round picks. There is a certain team that has a young quarterback that would be trade bait. And there is a certain quarterback who just made it to the playoffs last year, but yet is currently in discussions and currently in open discussions of getting traded this said off season. If I am this organization, if I am their general manager, I am calling the Houston Texans. I am offering them 3 first-round picks, a second-round pick, Jalen Hurts, and I am getting Deshaun Watson. He's coming to Philly. He's going to the Philadelphia Eagles organization, and he is playing against Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, and Mitchell Trubisky this offseason. The NFC East is going to be a lot of fun in 2022. But Andre and all people watching around the world, I want to know from you. I think if you're the Philadelphia Eagles and you see those first-round picks you have for the next 3 years, I think you could sacrifice a couple and get Deshaun Watson.
I mean, if you West Villanova born and raised on the playground is where you spent most of your days, I'm sure you super excited with that angle. I'm sure you're super ecstatic. The Eagles could use a quarterback. The magnitude of Deshaun Watson. Does the Jalen Hurts experience end? Of course it would. It would end in a heartbeat. It would end in a heartbeat. Houston, you'd have to take on that experience if that's the experience you want to take on. Take the picks, whatever the case may be. That's a good angle. I like that angle. Again, I ain't gonna be one to say. You know who I actually thought you were gonna say at first? I thought you were gonna mention the Minnesota Vikings, seeing that they have such a weird relationship with Kirk Cousins, and are they going to keep him or going to deal him? Is this, that, and the third? Or the San Francisco 49ers, who need a quarterback because Jimmy ain't doing it.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The reason why I excluded Minnesota is because they don't have the draft capital that Philadelphia has. I mean, Philadelphia, I think, has 5 first-round picks in the next 2 drafts. There's something insane with that. So when it comes to the Eagles, they could sacrifice a couple. Now, San Francisco, unfortunately, they don't really have any first-round picks because they traded a lot of their first-round picks to get Trey Lance last year. So that's why I excluded San Francisco. The draft capital has a lot to do with it. Now,
again, making those mistakes, boy, oh boy, trading first-round picks for Trey Lance, who didn't play too much last season. Okay. So depends on what you want from your first rounder, right?
Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens in San Francisco. We're talking about the NFL here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Andre Robinson, the fire starter from the Rise Up family, Power 96.5 FM out there in Buffalo, New York. And we're going to go to the sports entertainment capital of the world. We're going to come down to Las Vegas, Nevada. We're going to talk about the Raiders because there is a certain trade proposal that I want to talk about. Now, with all the quarterback controversy that's been going on right now, with all of the Russell Wilsons being traded, with the Carson Wentz's being traded, with the huge contract extension of your boy out there in Green Bay, understand that when it comes to the Las Vegas Raiders, the Derek Carr rumors have been insane. And after the Raiders locking up their defensive end, their all-pro defensive end, and Max Crosby to a 4-year deal worth $95 million, they have a huge decision to make, and that is, are they going to trade Derek Carr or are they going to keep Derek Carr? And I'm going to give my angle, and then I'll have you give your angle second, considering it is in my backyard. It is in Las Vegas, Nevada. So, when it comes to Derek Carr, I've been saying this on the first episode of the Sports Angle PR Connections Radio last week. I've said this throughout my last year that I've been doing my broadcasting. When it comes to Derek Carr, can you get a quarterback who's better? Can the Raiders get a quarterback who is a better than an above average quarterback in the NFL? Because if the Raiders can get a quarterback better than Derek Carr, then you trade him. If you can get a quarterback who's a top 5, top 10 in the NFL, then you let Derek Carr go. However, if you cannot get that, if you're going to get a downgrade as his replacement, then you keep put. You have Derek Carr come back for his 8th season as a Las Vegas Raider, and you make sure that Derek Carr stays very handsomely paid, by the way, but you make sure he stays as a Las Vegas Raider. Well, it's interesting because this huge carousel of the NFL free agency and trade circle, majority of the top quarterbacks, you already know where they're going. Russell Wilson's already gone. Aaron Rodgers is already gone. You also had Desean Watson who's still on the trade block. So here is my angle. I'm going to keep it short and sweet. If Desean Watson would get traded to Las Vegas, then yes, you let Derek Carr go. But if you cannot get Desean Watson, and if the Colts aren't, as proposed, to trade 2 first-round picks to get Derek Carr, then you keep Derek Carr here in Las Vegas. Unless the Colts are willing to make that trade, you keep Derek Carr in Las Vegas. Andre, what about you? Because there's been a lot of talk here in Las Vegas that the Colts, as quarterback hungry as they are, will be willing to trade for Derek Carr to make them his quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. I just was it's interesting that you mentioned that, Mr. Sports Angle, because the Cleveland Browns also have been talking about trying to get Derek Carr as well, in the Indianapolis Colts. Something that needs to be looked at as far as the Cleveland Brown trade. The reason why the Browns want to trade is real simple. Derek Carr's stats in 2021 was 68% completion rate, had 4,804 yards, 23 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 94. Baker Mayfield's stats last year was 61% completion rating, 3,010 yards, 17 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and a rating of 83.1. Have you ever heard the song "Let Me Upgrade You"? Yeah. The Cleveland Browns would be lovely. They would be lovingly appreciative of an upgrade, okay? And not the Beyonce type of upgrade, but the type of upgrade that could put Cleveland where they need to be, especially with the running game that they have and the fact that, they do have still some weapons. If they keep Jarvis Landry, I mean, getting Derek Carr could keep Jarvis Landry where he is. They paid David Njoku, that. So I see the Cleveland Browns being more of a work than the Indianapolis Colts. As much as the Colts do have the 2 first-round capital draft capital to give away. If so, so be it. Hey. But with all that I just said, and it sounds good, and the upgrade you sounds real good, I think that you guys in your backyard should keep Derek Carr. I think, to be very honest, as interesting as it sounds, Derek Carr should probably be a lifer. One of those guys. I mean, you've rode the wave with this guy for so long. Make some decisions elsewhere. Beef up maybe that secondary. Maybe you did what you had to do in keeping Max. Beef up the wide receivers a little bit. Get you some weapons. The teams that get weapons usually win Super Bowls. We've seen that. Do that. Go that way.
Well, actually, I'm going to add upon that. The teams that beef up their offensive line win Super Bowls. We have seen the teams that spend money on offensive line, they're the ones hoisting the Lombardi. So if I'm the Raiders, I'm spending their offseason beefing up the left guard, center, and right guard. Because you have a good left tackle in Colton Miller. You use a first-round pick on Alex Leatherwood at right tackle, but you need to help the interior.
Yeah, absolutely. Just remember, and this is just from my camp, Cody Ford is out there, most likely. Mitch Morris could be out there, most likely. Beef up those positions. Beef up the guard and tackle positions. Beef them up.
And is Wyatt Teller still with Buffalo right now?
No, Wyatt Teller been Rocco Raquelli. One of the worst moves the Buffalo Bills could have did was give away all-pro Wyatt Teller to the Cleveland Browns.
I mean, he is part of, according to Pro Football Focus, the best offensive line in the NFL. So there you go. Now,
yes,
when it comes to Buffalo, you were talking about wide receivers with the Raiders. Hey, Gabriel Davis, if he turns into a superstar, hey, bring Stephon Diggs down to Las Vegas. Hey, bring Stephon Diggs down.
No, sir.
Davis be number one. Come on.
Never. Don't you start your mess, Rocco Raquelli over there in Vegas. Okay, you might be the sports entertainment capital of the world, sir, but ain't no way the Bills is entertaining that. We ain't entertaining. The Bills will not entertain giving up Stephon Diggs. Not a chance. Not a chance. You got Zay Jones, but you ain't getting Stephon. Come on out.
Now, the final big topic that came out of the last 48 hours. I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers, by the way, because that was actually earlier in the week. So, yeah, I'm not talking about Aaron Rodgers. We don't need to go there. But the Russell Wilson trade was actually 48 hours ago. It's in the same time window, so I will talk about it. One of the biggest trades in NFL history. In fact, it was ranked third in terms of the amount of players that were exchanged in this deal. Man, I'd love to see an NFL trade tree about this deal. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Anyway, so when it comes to the Russell Wilson trade going to Denver, let me ask this question in a two-parter. The Denver Broncos, does this make them Super Bowl contenders getting Russell Wilson? And secondly, for the Seattle Seahawks, they're planning on entering a 5-year rebuild from Seattle himself. They admitted that they're going to start a 5-year rebuild starting this year. But if you are Seattle, are you taking those draft picks and are using them for yourself? Or are you taking those draft picks? Are you taking those players? And are you going to do a Dallas Cowboys edition? Are you going to flip those players for picks to add more draft capital and acquire more players long term? Because a lot of people forget that's how the 89 Cowboys did it. Is that Jimmy Johnson took the 5 players that he got from Minnesota and immediately flipped them for picks. So I want to ask you, Andre, as a two-parter, what is Denver going to do? Does this make them Super Bowl contenders with Russell Wilson? And with Seattle, are we going to see a replica of what happened with Dallas 35 years ago and having them take all these draft picks and flip them to add even more draft picks and become a better team?
That's exactly what Seattle will do. Seattle, I'll answer the second question first. Seattle definitely will take those picks, especially being in a rebuild. You have to be very careful. You can't be too gung ho on trying to hit home runs right out the gate when you're in a rebuild, because doing so you can slip up and make a lot of mistakes being overzealous. And I suspect that as much as those draft picks are super appealing, which you can get people in the draft, a bunch of people in the draft. Again, I have to state that this draft is kind of weak. It's a weak draft class. I'm flipping those picks. I got to flip them to get some pieces that I need that maybe come with veteran guys that I could get. Let me also say, though, that I looked at the top 100 free agents. And after the first 8 or 9, it ain't that appealing, those free agents. So, I mean, again, you have to build the formula. Hey, do you see the guys that you're going to get in the draft? Are they going to be impact players immediately that we can build on? But at the same token, are they going to give us something? These picks, man, you can't just have first-round picks and they don't equate to nothing. If you're a first-round pick in the NFL, it has to go for something. It has to equate for something. Has to, has to be a diamond. You have to take that piece of coal, you have to mold it and shape it, and it has to produce something, or you look bad, okay? Especially in a rebuild. I'm definitely taking my bumps, and I'm getting some pieces, and I'm flipping the picks, because most likely Seattle will probably have a top 5, top 8 pick again next year in the draft. So I'm definitely doing that. That's number 1. Number 2, the Denver Broncos. As it concerns the Denver Broncos, I will say this, John Elway, sir, you may not be able to draft quarterbacks well, but you damn sure know how to pick them up in free agency very well. Peyton Manning, i.e. Peyton Manning, now i.e. Russell Wilson. I mean, you can't get no better than that when it comes to picking up quarterbacks, however you pick them up. And let me remind you that Russell Wilson wasn't a free agent when this happened, right? He wasn't a free agent when this happened. Peyton Manning was released and he got him. That was nice. Release, got him from Indianapolis. Lovely, right? Lovely move, right? Gotta respect it.
Yeah, no, I understand that 100% when it comes to the Denver Broncos organization and everything that's going on. I definitely understand that. And hey, you know what? Something that somebody's going to bring up is the fact that Russell Wilson actually had a clause in his contract that would have made him a free agent this offseason. That actually was part of his contract.
Yeah, absolutely. His time came and gone in Seattle. I don't know if that's because of Pete Carroll or if that's because of their general manager. I mean, their general manager really didn't do them a whole lot of favors with the offensive line. Um, Denver has a pretty good offensive line. They should be able to run the ball effectively. I'm looking at their roster right now. Defensively, I don't know if people know this, but Denver was top 5 in defense last year, points allowed, which we know Russell loves to put points up. At least he tries to. With the weapons he has, maybe he lost Noah Fant, but I suspect that this team will be better than last year and will definitely make a run for the AFC West title. Patrick Mahomes, get ready.
And as we've been talking about the NFL here on Sports Angle on Pure Connections Radio, I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We're here with Andre Robinson from the Power 96.5 FM out there in Buffalo, New York, part of the Rise Up family. And speaking of the AFC West, kind of staying with the Denver conversation for a second, Kansas City has made it to Super Bowl, multiple Super Bowls in the last half decade. The Denver Broncos, they won that Super Bowl only a couple of years ago. And you have the Chargers, who are an upcoming team. The Chargers, they are, on the come up. And they just recently added a multi-time all-pro and a multiple Pro Bowler in Khalil Mack, and also extended Mike Williams to a multi-year deal, so he's going to be staying in Los Angeles as well. So the Chargers have gotten better. The Chiefs are still the Chiefs. The Broncos have gotten better. The Raiders, depending on what they do this year, is it possible that the AFC West this season will be a repeat of what the NFC West was in 2021? Is it possible that we might see not one, not two, but 3 solid teams in one division come out of the AFC West?
Absolutely. I just had this conversation with my colleague, my brother and mentor, Mookie Hawkins. Shout out to you, the coach, about how the AFC West very well could be the NFC West this season. Definitely, for sure. But my question to you, Rocco, is, does this mean that your team may be the team that don't make the playoffs, sir?
Once again, it all depends on if you're keeping Derek Carr. That's really all it is. It depends on if you're keeping Derek Carr, because the Raiders were just a playoff team. Like, not even a fraction of a second ago, the Raiders were a playoff team. And you still have Darren Waller, you still have Josh Jacobs. They just assigned Max Crosby to a massive deal. Yeah, they got rid of Corey Littleton, Alec Ingold. They got rid of him. Yeah, we all know about the Henry Ruggs situation, the Davian Arnett situation. They ain't coming back next year. Well, but when it comes to the Raiders, if they can keep their core together, if they can keep the 5 most important players on the Raiders and then build around those 5 players, I could see them being 3rd place in the AFC West. I could see them being a team that's competing for a playoff spot. Because
at least you're honest about it. I like it.
Well, hey, that's what we do here on the Sports Angle. I'm always honest about what's going on here in the sports entertainment capital of the world, Las Vegas.
Real journalism, baby. Real journalism.
Howard Cosell, yeah, one of the greatest of all time. Now, when it comes to the NFL, I will talk about one last topic before we move over to the NHL side. It is a debate question. It's a debate question that someone brought up and they wanted me to talk about on this very show. Shout out to that person. They were at my day job and they asked me to bring this up. So, of course, I'm going to give it to them. And that question is, if you had to start an NFL team with one running back, all-time running back, and you had to start with one, who is it going to be and why? Because remember, Andre, there's a lot of great running backs that have been in the NFL. There's been plenty of great running backs. So this was a debate question. I'll give a shout out to the person at my day job who gave me this idea. I'm not going to take credit for it. It was all him. But the debate question for tonight's show, if you had to take one running back all time to build your team around, who would it be and why? Andre, I'll start with you. The audience, if you are in the chat, you want to comment, have your angle be heard, you could do that as well.
Wow. How we just – this is why you guys need to listen to the sports angle right here on PRConnectionsRadio.com, the voice of new media. This is why you need to tune in and support this guy. I thought I was the one who gets the fire started. That's a definite fire starting debate question right there. You gonna start a lot of trouble with this one. I mean, you got generations upon generations who like Jim Brown and Sweetness, and then you got the Barry Sanders and the Emmitt Smiths of the world, the Tony Dorsetts. You got the Gale Sayers of the world, and those running backs. I mean, you can't forget Eric Dickerson. You can't forget LaDainian Tomlinson. You can't forget Walter Payton. There's Walter Payton up there. You can't forget Earl Campbell. Those guys, man. With all that being said, I am taking a guy who did not need an offensive line to generate. Because the question that we never got to really see was, what could that guy do with an actual offensive line? And that would be the one and only Detroit Lion, Barry Sanders. Barry Sanders was a guy who, for mostly all of his career, ran the football with probably one of the worst offensive lines that I've ever seen, run blocking offensive lines I've ever seen in my life. I mean, Barry Sanders would be the type of guy you see making cuts and moves 4 and 5 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And he'd take that and make an 80-yard touchdown run out of it. Could you imagine Barry Sanders with an offensive line, the statute of the Dallas Cowboys? Could you imagine Barry Sanders with the Chicago Bears offensive line and being an organization that had that type of attitude and demeanor? The Chicago Bears probably would have won more than one Super Bowl with Barry Sanders behind him. Yeah, I mean, that's debatable, very debatable. Can you imagine Barry Sanders, staying in the NFL even longer than he did? And actually getting that opportunity. Barry Sanders, to me, is the type of person who turns literally the phrase nothing into something and makes it stand out. He's the guy that puts bold capital letters on that statement alone. So for me, personally, I love all these running backs. I may love some more than others, but for me, it's Barry.
And I'm going to give my angle because obviously I am Ian Rakelli, host of the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio, and we're getting towards the end of the first hour here. And there are 3 running backs that I'm always putting at the top. There is a trio of running backs that I always put in the high respect as some of the greatest running backs of all time. Earl Campbell, Walter Payton, and Jim Brown. Because these were running backs that actually changed the game for the better. Jim Brown was a pioneer. He was a trailblazer for the running back position. I mean, the way that he ran the game and the way he revolutionized the running back position was remarkable. Walter Payton, not only is he a Chicago Bear, which always is going to have a little, bias to my heart, but you got to admit the fact that he would run left, run right, run center, he would do it 90 plays a game. The defense knew it was coming, but you couldn't stop him. He would just shrug 5 or 6 tackles off and then break loose for a touchdown. That was who Walter Payton was. And then Earl Campbell was the definition of, I'm not going to run on top of you. I'm not going to run under you. I'm just going to run straight through you. I mean, Earl Campbell was a bruiser with the Houston Oilers. I mean, he was an absolute legend. So out of those three running backs that I'm always going to put at the highest of respect, I got to go with the original. I have to go with, in my opinion, the greatest running back of all time. And if I'm starting a team today with any running back all time, I am picking Jim Brown to be that choice.
Wow. Surprised you did not pick Walter Payton. Interesting enough.
Hey, Walter Payton's always going to be close to my heart. He's number 2. Like, people always ask me who are the top 2 running backs of all time. I say it's Jim Brown and Walter Payton. Like, I know Barry Sanders was great, and all those guys were great, but Payton and Brown are top 2. So,
you can't listen. I'm not. It's a great debate, but you cannot. It is very hard to debate against 3-time NFL MVP. It's very hard to debate leading the league in rushing 8 seasons, 8 times, and rushing touchdowns 5 times in the league. It is very hard to debate 12,312 yards, okay, and 106 total rushing touchdowns. It's very hard. I mean, on top of the fact that he had 20 receiving touchdowns, that is very hard to debate against. So I respect Jim Brown, the pioneer, the trailblazer, the eyebrow raising, trailblazing, Cleveland Browns touchdown making running back. Phenomenal.
And that gets past our NFL discussion here on the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. I'm your host, Ian Kelly. We are here with Anya Robinson, Power 96.5 FM out there in Buffalo, New York. And Rise Up Family, of course, Challenger Sports News. You're getting all that work. You're putting the work in out there. I have a lot of respect for that. So,
appreciate it.
Getting into the NHL, and the deadline is very the trade deadline is coming up very quickly. But
I like how you skipped. Okay. Maybe go ahead.
Hey, don't ruin the cliffhanger. Before we get into the NHL trade deadline, we got to talk about a recent game that happened. We got to talk about a game that happened between that Vegas Golden Knights right behind me and your Buffalo Sabres. I know you were at the game. I know you were doing media, doing what you do best. And I was here in Las Vegas watching it, doing what I do best. But I want to know from you, Andre, what did you take away from the game? More importantly, what was the overall reaction to Jack Eichel making his return for the first time to Buffalo?
Well. For you guys out there in Vegas, I want to thank y'all so very much for a great listen. Got to be a class act first before we get to talking stuff, okay? I want to thank y'all so very much for probably the best hockey game that I've watched this year. And a lot of folks will be like, well, they didn't score that much. Well, you didn't have to score that much to see that this was high energy, high octane, phenomenal hockey being played. I mean, it was very entertaining, very intriguing, a lot of fun. The reaction to Jack Eichel was boo every time he touched the puck. The tribute that he got, Buffalo being the class act organization, shout out to the Buffalo Sabres. It got mixed reactions. If you ever want to see clips of it, if these major corporations don't play it, well, guess what? I got it. You can come to me for it, for sure. It was a great time. It was a lot of fun. And, Sabres won 3-1. It was very poetic and very, very, prophetic that the 2 guys who was traded for Jack Eichel ended up being the 2 guys scoring 2 of the 3 guys who scored for the Sabres in this game, which obviously we know was Peyton Cribbs and my guy, I call him Alex Tucky. They call him Tucky here, but Alex Tuck.
And we had a conversation about this recently. Alex Tuck was speed. Now, Alex Tuck was a phenomenal player in Las Vegas. The problem was that he really didn't get a chance to shine on the bottom 6. He was really not given any solid top 6 minutes out here in Vegas. They'd give him 1 or 2 games, give him a couple of games here and there. but he really didn't have any consistent shot to be a top 6 forward here in Vegas.
Yeah, he's
So
on the first line here.
Yeah, he's first line. See, that's the thing. With Alex Tuck, he's really given a chance to shine there. And with Peyton Krebs, he was just a prospect that wasn't being able to develop here in Vegas. I mean, he was their top prospect, but because of how stacked the Golden Knights were at that position, Peyton Krebs really wasn't given the shot.
Yeah, Krebs is the third liner here.
So you have Peyton Krebs, you have Alex Tuck, and obviously you're going to have that first-round pick, and there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be going to Buffalo from the Jack Eichel trade. And I will point out that, yes, for $10 million, he's not scoring a goal every single game. I get that. But ever since Jack Eichel has come to Las Vegas, he has actually been earning that contract. I mean, don't get me wrong. Jack Eichel, I would love to see him score a goal, score 2 goals every single game. But Jack Eichel so far with the Vegas Golden Knights, he has already had 8 points. He's already had 4 goals already. So the fact that he's had 4 goals and 8 points already as a Vegas Golden Knight, this is a guy who, yes, it's going to take him a while to get into full form because of the surgery. But once Jack Eichel gets out on that ice, and Andre, you know it better than anyone else. I mean, this is a guy that had an 82-point season not that long ago in Buffalo. I mean, Jack Eichel is a legit goal scorer. He's a sniper for a reason in the NHL. So when he gets his footing under him and when he finally gets that, consistency and he's not worrying about his neck, he's going to be a great player in the NHL.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, I think both teams won on this trade, obviously. Jack Eichel being the guy who can produce, has produced. He produced enough to get a 8-year, $80 million contract originally from the Buffalo Sabres. So whether you feel some type of way about him or not, I mean, he was worthy enough to get that. Do I agree with the contract? No. I talked to a Hall of Famer in Rob Ray, phenomenal hockey player back in the day. You know who he is, the enforcer, the razor.
Punching a fan who came onto the ice.
Absolutely. A guy who said, 1 or 2 year contracts kept us motivated back in the day, which is something that he thought was going to be an issue with Jack Eichel as far as the contract that he got. A lot of these guys get these big contracts and then get uninspired, or they get lackadaisical. I'm glad that he hasn't done that in Vegas, become lackadaisical. I don't remember what the number was exactly Vegas got him for, but I know it was a couple picks. Krebs, who plays on the third line with Dylan Cousins, a guy who just came out of the draft last year, and then Alex Tuck, who plays on the first line with Skinner and Tage Thompson. So I think both of those guys, organizations won in this trade.
I remember exactly what the trade was. It was Peyton Krebs, Alex Tuck, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick.
Right. So, no. I know that part. I'm talking about the money-wise. For what did you guys pay for?
$10 million. I think he's getting paid $10 million a year around there.
Okay, so it's $10 million a year still.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Interesting. I mean, hey, you pay for what you want, right? Pay for what you want. But I would be amiss not to bring up something about Jack Eichel. I know I've been very nice in this conversation, but I might get a little PRconnectionsradio.com. Do not get mad at me when I say this, but Jack Eichel made a specific comment that has rubbed a lot of folks the wrong way.
I know exactly what comment you're talking about, Andre.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rocco, and tell us what Jack Eichel said. I would love to hear
that place has been the loudest it's ever been.
Yeah. Why? Well, how long did it take? How long did it take?
7 years, if I remember. It was like 6 or 7 years.
It took. So Jack is funny, hilarious, a little cocky, You know, some people would call him the 7-letter word that starts with A and ends with E. But yeah, he made the comment about, it took 7 years and me leaving for them to get into the game. Them being the fans to get into the game and actually, be loud. That's a tough one. There's some, they say there's some truth in every joke. I'm sure he said that jokingly, and then also he meant what he said by that. But there's some truth to it. I mean, yeah. I mean, he didn't play on the greatest team when he was here. A lot of people wasn't believing in the Sabres. And in fact, I mean, last night you seen 12,000 plus come to the stadium. It's the largest crowd all year for, to see Jack Eichel and the Sabres go at it. You really haven't seen a whole lot of, people at these games. 8,000 has been like the biggest turnout. And that's because the Sabres have to win back the trust of these fans. They have to get them back. COVID didn't help the situation at all, but they have to win these fans back. And it's something that was talked about in the presser about getting these fans to come back. And there's games like this that make the fans come back to hockey in Hockey Town, USA, which is Buffalo. So he's got some truth. There's some truth to it.
So as we've talked about the Buffalo Sabres, Vegas Golden Knights, the game that happened recently in the NHL world, here with Audrey Robinson from Rise Up Family. And getting into the NHL trade deadline, there is 3 big names that are on the top of the trade list. And, I'm not going to sit here and try to do a lot of speculating, but what I want to do with you, Andre, and with all people watching around the world, is I'm going to mention these 3 names, and I'm going to ask you, based off of the stats I'm going to give you, if you are a team that is 1 player away from winning a championship, do you go out and get said player? That's simply the whole entire point of this segment. I'm going to give you those 3 names. I'm going to tell you what their stats are, and you're going to tell me if you are a general manager, would you, with their cap hit, take that trade and get them onto your roster? Now, the first person is actually a player that has already scored 42 points this season. This guy's been a beast for a struggling San Jose Sharks team. That is Tomas Hertl. This guy, 28 years old. This guy's been a center for the San Jose Sharks for an entire decade now in the NHL. And this guy, 22 goals, 42 points on the year at 56 games, $5.6 million cap hit. However, he will be a unrestricted free agent at the end of the season. So if you are a team, for example, like the Winnipeg Jets, if you're a team like the Toronto Maple Leafs, if you're a team that is contending for a Stanley Cup, if you need goal scoring, Tomas Hertl, 22 goals already on the year, 42 points. Would you trade for a player like that and bring him in to win a championship?
Well, that means I would have to be the Buffalo Sabres general manager.
I'll say for argument's sake, yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to. The Buffalo Sabres. Is he a speedy guy? No, I haven't heard much of this guy. So.
Tomas Hertl, he's not really in terms of speed, he's not the speediest guy in the world, but what he is he's a guy who knows how to put the puck in the back of the net.
Does he bring attitude? Does he bring a certain allure to him? A certain attitude?
Yes, he does.
Okay, something that the Sabres is missing. If I'm a GM, I get him, but I need to hear the other 2. The only problem with this guy is that I haven't heard much of him. So. I mean, he sounds good. You make him sound real interesting and intriguing, but let me hear the other 2 before I choose him.
Now, the second option, we're going to go down to the Ottawa Senators. They have a right winger, Zach Sanford, 27 years old, only 9 goals on the year, but he has had only a $2 million cap hit. With him being an unrestricted free agent, he has already been part of a winning franchise out there in the St. Louis Blues. He has championship experience, and that is very valuable for a Stanley Cup playoff run. So, Zach Sanford, the 27-year-old right winger from the Ottawa Senators, only a $2 million cap hit, would be a UFA at the end of the year, but brings playoff experience and championship experience if you do acquire him.
Sounds good. Like the young age. Is he speedy? Again, I gotta ask questions. Is he speedy? What type of attitude does he bring?
He's not really a speedy guy. I mean, it's really hard to find speedy guys at the trade deadline. But when it comes to attitude, he's a guy that will bring it every single night.
Okay. Give me the next one.
And then the next one is a goaltender. Because we all got to know that goaltending is a valuable part of the NHL. Mm-hmm. And 25-year-old Ilya Samsonov from the Washington Capitals. He has a 2.39 goals against average, a 90.1 save percentage, only a $2 million cap hit. However, is a restricted free agent at the end of the year. So if him being only 25 years old, if you are a general manager in the NHL and you need to make a Stanley Cup run, do you go out and get a guy like Ilya Samsonov, a 25-year-old goaltender who has plenty of upside in his career?
So, I want to say I've watched him play here, Ilya Samsonov. I also want to ask, why is he a trade guy? Like, I mean, a guy who's only given up 2.31 and only has a cap hit of such and such. I get he's restricted, but why would the Capitals be doing this?
The reason why is because the Washington Capitals are barely a playoff team, and they actually need to shed cap space for next year.
Okay. I'm glad that you mentioned that. They're barely a playoff team. Do you think that this team can make a playoff push that resonates to them getting anywhere near Lord Stanley?
Most likely no, because the Washington Capitals are in a very deep Eastern Conference, and they'll be a 7th seed, 8th seed at best.
Okay. Well, the Buffalo Sabres, and shout out to Craig Anderson, by the way. Shout out to him. One of a kind, just won his 300th game as a goaltender. 41, I think he's 41. He's played in the league 21 seasons. He's played with 5 different teams. Phenomenal leader in the locker room. I had the chance to ask him some questions yesterday. The Sabres have some goaltending issues. Do I like this? I mean, I watched him the game before against Florida give up 6 goals. And then when it comes to Jack Eichel and playing the Vegas Golden Knights, he only gave up 1, and that was on some weird goal. I mean, you got to count the ugly ones too, right? Some weird goal from like the right side by the blue line. I'm like, near the bench area. I'm like, okay, well, whatever. It looked like the puck just kind of raindropped right over his shoulder. Mm-hmm. UPL is good. I like UPL. I have my reservations about the rest of the goaltending roster. Subban is terrible. Sorry to say it, but it's the truth.
Yeah, like Michael Hauser, I believe, for a split second.
Yeah, Hauser is garbage. God awful. The Sabres are in definite need of a goaltender. They are. Especially if we're talking about futures to come, because you're not going to keep Craig. I think this might be Craig last year, actually. Do you go with UPL? Or do you go with the guy who's young? How old is Samson?
Samsonov, 25 years old.
Oh, see. For me, it's goaltending. for me. At first, you had me on the first one. The first guy who I didn't hear much of but can score, he would have been my pick had you not told me about this guy. Samsonov. I'm taking Samsonov because I have to, first and foremost, if I'm going to get great performance consistently every night. I mean, you said that his save percentage is 91.
Is 90.1, yeah.
90.1, okay, that's good for me. 2.31.
2.39, yeah.
39, okay, I'm taking it. I got to take him for the fact that that's what they need. They need legitimate goaltending. I've been one who said the Buffalo Sabres have given up goals. At one point, they had given up multiple goals in the first period of games, 35% of their games of the season, and they did it a lot while they were at home, giving up multiple goals in the first period. Haven't seen that as much as of late, but it still is a recurring issue. So I'm taking the goaltender because I think that's the most intricate piece, the most important one. And I think with the roster that we have, as far as having, Tucky, Skinny, look at me using hockey nicknames, Tage on the tape. I call him Tage on the tape. Victor Olofsson, guys like that. With young guys like Dylan Cousins and Peyton Krebs and, having leadership in Kyle Poso, things like that. I think that this team would better benefit with a goaltender instead of another scorer. I think these guys can score if you give them, what matters first is defense. I mean, you win more games too with the defense. So give me the last guy. Give me Samsonov. I'll take him.
I'm glad you said that because the reason why I did that was on purpose. Because option A was a goal scorer. Option B was a defensive-minded player. And option C was a goaltender. Mm-hmm. There are going to be plenty of teams this trade deadline who are in need of goal scorer, like Tomas Hertl. There's going to be plenty of teams who need a defensive-minded guy like Zach Sanford. And there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to need a goaltender like Ilya Samsonov. As a matter of fact, there's actually one other goaltender that actually has been in the reports lately, and that is former Vegas Golden Knight Marc-Andre Fleury. Yeah. And the Washington Capitals, interesting enough, have been in the conversation to get him. I actually think the Colorado Avalanche are going to get Marc-Andre Fleury, considering they want to win a championship out there in Colorado. But I'm going to show this comment real quick, and then I'm going to take it back off. But when it comes to the Vegas Golden Knights, you know what? Ilya Samsonov, only a $2 million cap hit. The Golden Knights want to win a championship, the 7th in the Western Conference. But if they keep losing like they are, and their defense keeps falling apart like they have been, I actually think getting more defense is more valuable at this point than getting a goaltender. But, hey, I'm in the minority here. I think the defense is actually the biggest problem in Vegas. So when it comes to the NHL, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to discuss. And I have to ask this question because I know you're out there in Buffalo. Do they have a most valuable player this season? Like, in terms of, like, all the players who have been part of Buffalo this year, is there one player that stands out?
So there is a few. There's a few who stand out, and they stand out in spurts. Tage Thompson stands out as someone who is developing his game more. Kyle Oposo, for his veteran leadership, lays it out on the line every shift. Does not take a shift off. You also have Tucky, Alex Tuck, who's played pretty damn well and lays it on the line. Even in the Florida game the other night, in the Kings game where he kind of injured his his neck and shoulder area, trying to make something happen in that game. Those guys, to me, stand out. Obviously, there's been talks about Rasmus Dahlin. He plays well, but in spurts. He has some times where he's off. So those three guys stand out to me. Victor Olofsson has had his moments. As you know, you the hockey guy, Victor Olofsson had a drought as far as scoring, the longest drought of his career earlier in the season, scoring. Skinner is here and there. He plays well, but he's here and there. So those three guys stand out to me: Thompson, Tuck, and Oposo. And in fact, I'm wondering who should have the C on their shirt, whether it's Tuck or Oposo. Some people say Oposo had his time, and some people say it should be Tuck because he's the younger guy and give him the opportunity.
Well, based off of what I've seen about the Buffalo Sabres and based off of the amount of performance I've seen from Buffalo, I would say a captain, and that doesn't necessarily have to be, the flashiest guy. It doesn't necessarily have to be, one of the best players on the team. But when it comes to the Buffalo Sabres, and I've always said this about captaincy in the NHL, it needs to go to someone who's a leader. It needs to go to someone who's a leader in the locker room, someone who kind of helps the boys in terms of performance. And I've noticed with the Buffalo Sabres, Kyle Oposo, he's definitely a solid captain. I think he's someone who's really good. But I've also noticed lately that Rasmus Dahlin has also been kind of taking off and kind of developing on his own in terms of leadership. So if there's going to be someone on the younger side that could be a captain for Buffalo, I wouldn't be surprised if Rasmus Dahlin develops more of a leadership quality out there in Buffalo.
I can agree with that. He's the one who gets the most scrutiny. I'll tell you that in Buffalo. You hear his name a lot. Rasmus Dahlin. Shout out to my guy Alex Snyder from Sports Radar, who sits next to me every game, and his name is first on the docket. Rasmus Dahlin. What is he doing? Like, what was that? Rasmus, shoot the puck. What's going on? We are very eyes on, glued to Rasmus Dahlin and everything he does. So yes, I could see that being a potential, guy who, captain, from his mistakes and from his experience, takes that as a young guy and feeds that to the younger guys. But I will say this: Kyle Oposo made a interesting comment in the last presser that I got with him, as it pertains to needing to be motivated. He told me flat out, if you're a guy in the NHL and you're young and you need to be motivated, you need to go find another job. And that he will, put his foot up people's butts and get in there with games that you've seen, such as the Florida Panthers game when it was 6-1, and we know how that ended. Good choices. Oposo, Rasmus, Tucky. I think Tuck is still up there, but good choice. Like it.
And when it comes to MVP here at the Vegas Golden Knights, it's obviously going to be Jonathan Marchessault. I mean, this guy has been here for so long, leading in goals, assists, points. His defense leaves a lot to be desired, but most forwards leave defense to be desired. So when it comes to Jonathan Marchessault, I say he's the MVP of the Vegas Golden Knights. I was really surprised that Tage Thompson wasn't brought up at all, considering the fact that he's leading the team in goals and assists right now.
He is. Remember I said the top players was Tage, Tuck, Oposo to me. Rasmus is in that conversation, obviously, because we have the microscope on him all the time. But Tage, to me, Tage doesn't need it. For me, Tage is the young guy still trying to develop his game somewhat.
Right. And came from the Ryan O'Reilly trade.
Yes.
so many people talk about. Still.
Yes, I know. The Ryan O'Reilly tree, straight here from another guy from Buffalo. Interesting enough. I don't see him as that. I see him as the guy who, takes the veteran leadership that he's getting in the locker room and applies it to his game. So for me, I don't see as a leader. I don't see that leadership as much as I do with like Tuck or Oposo as much. And Rasmus Dahlin, I mean, yeah, he could be a C, but again, I see that from those two, Tuck and Oposo, more than anybody here. So, I mean, don't they got an A though? Don't they got an A?
Well, you have an alternate captain, you have a main captain, there's all stuff like that.
Hey, give him the A.
All right, there you go. So we've been talking about the NHL here on Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. We have about 2 minutes left. So, Andre, I want you to let everyone who's watching the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio where to find you and tell everybody what you're doing.
First of all, you can find me in the middle of humbleness and positivity. Find me there. You can find me in between those two. With that being said, you also can find me on Facebook, Andre Robinson, DeAndre Torch Robinson, Rise Up Family Sports Network on Facebook, Rise Up Family page on Facebook. You can also, listen to the radio shows, get that Power Page app, Power 96.5 FM radio every Monday, Wednesday, 10 p.m., every Sunday, 6 p.m. Also, you got to go get the Apollo Media Center app. I also have a TV show that's here on Saturdays from 1:30 to 2:30 that we shoot, and you can watch it on Facebook Live, but also get that Apollo Media Center app on your Google store. It plays all the shows, the TV shows in HD. I produce the show and host it. And then also, if you want to read any of my sports articles, you can go to thechallengernews.com. All right, read the articles online. The Rise Up Right articles are there online. Okay. And anytime y'all want to talk sports with me, I'm always available. You can just hit me up on Facebook. The Twitter is Rise Up Family on Twitter. And the Instagram is Rise Up Family Sports Network.
And the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. You can find us on all social media platforms at the Sports Angle on PR. And you can follow your host on Twitter at IanRickelli18. And we have a Facebook, a SoundCloud, PR Connections Radio, as I'm part of PR Connections Radio, the voice of new media. So this is the Sports Angle on PR Connections Radio. Episode 2 is in the books. Until next time, have a good one, and we'll see you later.